when I was doing my job and I was seeing there was actually a need and people actually wanted this, I was like, maybe we shouldn't be doing this on the website. We need to figure out how to do it to retail, to get into retail grocery stores. And so, yeah, we ran like a 6 or 7 month test, direct consumer. And then I was like doing a lot of my research, making sure who are our competitors, understanding the market, if it's possible for us to make this. So there's a lot of research, a lot of learning that I had to do in order for me to figure that out. And then it turns out there are a lot of people out there like me who are craving this type of food, but it turns out it's not just people like me, like, Salvadorian, but there's other people who want to expand their horizons when it comes to food in the freezer aisle.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Startup CPG podcast. This is Grace, and I'm here with another founder feature. Today, I'm talking to Cynthia Duran, the founder of Xinca Foods. Xinca Foods is a Salvadorian food brand making delicious frozen pupusas. Cynthia and I chat all about the challenges of bootstrapping, why it's important to her to self-manufacture, and why she decided to pause Xinca's growth last year to focus on awareness. I loved chatting with Cynthia, and even more, I love the pupusas Xinca makes. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, let me know what you think. Hello, everyone. This is Grace, and today I'm so excited to be joined by Cynthia Duran, the founder of Xinca Foods. Welcome to the show, Cynthia.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're such fans of Xinca Foods here at Startup CPG, and I actually talked to Cynthia about a year ago, right after Expo West 2024, because her brand, Xinca, won third or second place, I forget exactly which one, at our backpack brands at Alley Rally. And so we're doing a whole update now, a year later, what's going on with Xinca Foods. But before we get into all that, I think we should tell our listeners, who is Xinca Foods?
Yeah, so Xinca Foods is one of the first Salvadoran frozen food brands in the American market. So what makes us unique is that we manufacture all of our products in the United States, and we have our own manufacturing facility in Arlington, Washington. And so if you've never had Salvadorian food, but you've heard of a pupusa, we make frozen pupusas.
And frozen pupusas that are so freaking good. Like, oh my God. I had them in my freezer for a while and I was like, I had to stop myself from eating one every single day because I wanted them to last longer. And can you tell them like what your different flavors are for your pupusas?
Yes, definitely. So we have my mom's recipe, which is our beans and cheese, and it's my top seller. And then we have loroco and cheese, and a lot of people always ask us what loroco is. So loroco is an edible flower that grows in Central America. It's very earthy and herbaceous. So when you put it together with the cheese, you get a nice earthiness and savoriness because cheese brings in that saltiness, and the loroco brings in that herbalness. And then we also have our newest SKU, which is zucchini and cheese. A zucchini is actually one that we introduced like 2 months ago. The zucchini is kind of like floury, but not super floury either. And then you mix it together with the cheese, but it's much more creamier.
Yum. I can't wait to try that one. I've tried the beans and cheese and the Rocco and cheese, and both are, like I said, so, so good. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about why you decided to create this brand and also what you were doing before you decided it was time to, bring this to the market.
Yeah. So actually the reason why I brought I started Zinca has a lot to do with the fact that what I was doing previously for my career. So I was a data analyst for big Fortune 500s. So my last job was Microsoft and previously I was at T-Mobile HQ. So I used to move around a lot for a lot of these like tech jobs cuz I would move to like New York or I would move to different places. And sometimes I would work from like 9 to 5 or 9 to 8 p.m. And I just kind of wanted something quick and easy sometimes that reminded me of home. And so I assumed that I would be able to find, pupusas, like because that's my comfort food. But I was wrong. I was like, because I grew up in LA. And so LA, like, you're able to find like any ethnic type of cuisine. But when you leave big metropolitan cities, like finding ethnic cuisines like Salvadorian or Mexican food are tough to find. And so I assumed I would be able to find pupusas in the freezer out. And so when I was looking for pupusas, I was like, "Oh, crap." And then even restaurants were tough to find too, where you had to leave the area you're in to go like 30 or 40 minutes away or an hour, 2 hours away. So it was kind of rough. And so that kind of like is what made me start Zinca. And when I would visit my family would always pack me frozen pupusas, and my aunt will always bring me tamales. My aunt, she would always bring me Salvadoran tamales, and then she would be like, "Here, so you can take them with you." So my family always took care of me, and so that's the reason why I started Zinco.
I love that. How did you feel? So you saw this sort of need, like a personal need to have this product, but obviously you had kind of a cushy job too, like this tech job where, you're making good money and, it's a pretty stable job. Like you're not going to lose that job most likely. And so how did you make the decision to go all in on this more risky endeavor, right? Than a stable tech job?
Yeah, so it was really rough because my family didn't believe that I would leave my tech job because they were like, "Why would you start a food business?" That's those were the exact words. They actually didn't even believe me. And I remember when I told them that I had started this and I was doing this, they were like, "Wait, you really did this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I really did it." But I actually what I did, because I wanted to see if this was something that was a need. I started direct to consumer first. So I tested the waters on the website. And while I was doing that, I was also doing my job. And so when I was doing my job and I was seeing there was actually a need and people actually wanted this, I was like, maybe we shouldn't be doing this on the website. We need to figure out how to do it to retail to get into retail grocery stores. And and so yeah, we ran like a 6 or 7 month test direct to consumer. And then I was like doing a lot of my research, making sure who are our competitors, understanding the market, and then seeing who like if it's possible for us to make this. So there's a lot of research, a lot of learning that I had to do in order for me to figure that out. And then it turns out there are a lot of people out there like me who are craving this type of food, but it turns out it's not just people like me, like, Salvadorian, but there's other people who want to expand their horizons when it comes to food in the freezer aisle.
Yeah, and pupusas specifically too, I feel like are so kind of perfect for frozen food because there already are like that there's kind of already a process of freezing something like a pupusa, so you're not totally reinventing the wheel. But I am curious kind of thinking about your process of manufacturing. And I know you guys are completely, you know, you self-manufacture here in the States. And can you talk a little bit about like what it's been like to build that out and up as you have, grown into other, more retail locations and you're not just, doing DTC anymore?
We don't have a co-packer for the reason that our stuff is unique, and I didn't wanna go to my competitors because I wanted to make sure that we can sustain that uniqueness, and I'm very particular, how I wanted our product to be made, and so I wanted you to experience what I experienced growing up, and so when you cook that pupusa in your house, I want you to experience what I grew up eating, and so being able to have manufacture everything ourselves, I'm able to sustain that and make sure that you, the customer, are able to have a good product. And so when we were like building out our facility, because this is our second one, we had a smaller one and we moved into a bigger one last year. Um, we from the first one we learned a lot. It was a learning curve. Like there was just so much learning to do. Learning that having the right flow for like for your facility is very important. And so like and also like also finding the right people to build things for you. And so I actually project managed the whole entire build out for for both of our facilities. So like because we don't have the money, like, and there's certain things that you yourself have to do. And so like even finding the right machine, we did like all of this research, worked with different manufacturers of like equipment to find the right one, and then being like, these are the things I specifically am looking for. And so doing all of that was a lot of work and it took time. But it doesn't mean that, because it took time, it's not it wasn't hard. Yeah, it was tough. Like, there are times that people didn't wanna talk to us because we were too small. So, like, stuff like that. So, it was a lot of work, it took time, but I'm a very efficient person, and I like things to get done really quickly. And so, yeah, it took us about this facility took us, like, 6 months to get up and running again, which is extremely efficient. But yeah, like, the whole process was a lot of work, but I was heavily involved. It's not like I was, like, letting other people do things, because when you're bootstrapping, you have to really watch your pennies, and when I say you're watching your pennies, you literally have to watch every single penny. So, yeah, it's been a lot of work, but, we finally have the end result that we wanted, and, we have what we have now.
Yeah, and how what does that look like now on a day-to-day level? Like, as you're, literally the owner of this whole brand, but also self-manufacturing, and I know you have some people who, like, help you make the pupusas, but can you talk a little bit about what that looks like on a day-to-day and, like, how you juggle all your many responsibilities?
Yeah, and so there are days where I'm doing prep work for every single thing that we need to do for production day. So, like, for example, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are and sometimes Mondays or Tuesdays, we do all the production run. But during the week, I do all the prep work, like the filling work, get making sure we receive all of our ingredients, all the stuff that we need, receiving all of that, making sure that if, we have an order, getting my forklift out, driving my forklift, putting that pallet on the truck, take offloading things that, like, from with my forklift. Like, I literally do a lot of the stuff, and then my workers come in, and then sometimes they come in to do like, to clean, or sometimes they just come in to do production. So it all depends on, like, the days and where we are, and when it comes to managing the production schedule. So for me, like, being a little more organized and knowing what my priorities are is, like, how I maintain myself and making sure that we're getting things done. But also, like, I outsource certain things. Like, for me, the most important things that I could outsource was my accounting and a lawyer. I thought to myself, I don't want to spend time doing my account work if I can just pay someone else, because I would rather that get done properly than for me to be doing it and spending a lot of time on it. I know it sounds crazy, but it's the two important jobs that exist in your business. Knowing, like, having someone doing your numbers, and then having someone making sure your business is protected.
Mhm. Oh my god, totally. I could never do my own. I mean, I outsource my own accounting now, and I don't even run a whole CPG business. Like, I don't do my own taxes because I'm not good at math. Let's just say that. Um, but that makes a lot of sense to me. How do you, so it sounds like you're really hands-on with production, and then you outsource some of these things. What about, like, conversations with, like, retailers or, like, doing store demos? Like, how do you navigate that other side where you're, like, out of the production facility and more having, like, face to face with customers and possible buyers and things like that?
Yeah. So um normally, like, when we know we have certain things going on, like, we plan production around that. And so, like, for example, next week I'm going to San Francisco, right, for Startup CPG's grocery run in SF. So I know I'm going to be gone from Wednesday to Friday, because I'll be back in the morning, right? So I have literally 2 days to get everything ready for our next production run, which is going to be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right? And so I already spoke to my workers, and I was like, you guys are going to be here at this time. My plane lands at this time. I'm going to come from the airport. We're going to start production as soon as I get here. So it's all comes down to organizing yourself. And also, I do sometimes outsource our demo work, and I try to look for brand ambassadors that, love our brand. But sometimes I do outsource a lot of our demo work. And so I know I hired a few people in Texas to do some stuff for us. But, like, that's what I do because it makes it easier. But there are times that I do it because I know that, especially in Texas, sometimes I like to go to Texas just to make sure our product is doing well. But also another thing too, like, last year we kind of paused our growth for the reason that when we launched in Texas, it was a very big learning curve for us and understanding how to work outside with a grocery store outside of Washington State. So that was a good learning. And so that's been something that I've learned and kept him like, been able to be like, okay, these are the things we're going to do. If we launch in a different state, these are our learnings, right? So yeah, it's a lot to juggle, but there are things that, I'm like, okay, I will outsource or I can outsource that, stuff like that. But I try to kind of make sure that we can contain a lot of it because, like I said, we're bootstrapping. So we don't have the large amounts of capital to be spending on certain things.
We'll be right back.
All CPG brands need business insurance. Let's hope you don't have to use it, but if so, you better have a good policy. We get asked about it in Slack all the time. When do I need general liability, product liability, workers' comp, all that stuff? I always tag in our friends at Amelia Risk Insurance. Just talk to them, you will see what I mean. We use them personally, so does Fishwife, so many other brands from the community. They know you need coverage, but also you need to save money, so they will help you understand exactly what do you need and fight to find you the most affordable and effective policies. Reach out to them at ameliarisk.com. That's AMELIA risk.com. They're really happy to have a very friendly chat with you to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you speak a little bit to some of those learnings of expanding into Texas and the central markets and, leaving the sort of security of the state you're in?
Yeah, so because in 20 what was last year? 2024?
Yeah.
Yeah. 2024, we actually didn't exhibit at all last year. So in 2023, when we launched in Central Market, I was like, I don't know, I kinda was kinda tired of doing food shows, and I was like, I wanna really focus on consumers. I want people to know who we are, right? Who is Zinca? Because when we're on shelf, I wanna make sure people are buying our product. Cause cool, we can go to food shows, but in food shows, people know people know who you are and all this other stuff, but outside of that realm, you want the customers to also know who you are. And so last year, the year before that, for my last food show, which was Expo East, when it was Expo East, I was talking to my partner, who's my boyfriend. And so he and I were like, yeah, let's not do food shows for 2024 and let's focus on the awareness piece. Right. And so that was my biggest focus last year, making sure that we focus on the awareness. And so I literally took a year off, just focused and did consumer based shows just so we can make in both Texas, Washington, just so we can continue to generate that velocity. And so that was our biggest focus, focusing on those two areas, doing community things in like those regions, in both of these regions, and just making sure we're getting the word out. And so like that's how for 2024 that was my biggest focus and the biggest learning was one, our packaging was not good. So in Texas, that's where I learned that our packaging needed some work. And so I remember with my 3rd demo that I did in Texas, people were coming up to me and being like, So what is Zinca?" And I was like, "Oh, like, is it a product to eat?" And then I was like, "No, it's a pupusa. Have you heard of a pupusa?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, I've heard of pupusas." And so I was able to kinda gather that feedback from, like, the 3rd demo because we were in Texas, and this was in, like, February. And so then I remember, being, coming back and being like not even coming back, I was still in Texas, and I was, texting my friends, and I was like, "I need to change my packaging." And I asked my friends who because I worked in marketing, right? So, a lot of my friends understand messaging, understand how all of this stuff works, and that's when they were like, "You need to change it to this, and that." So then coming back, I was able to, make those adjustments to our packaging, which is what we have now, which where it says pupusas right in center, and you see our logo on the top. And so, that was one of the biggest learnings I had by doing demos, right, in Texas, because I was able to understand that and able to kinda gather that feedback and understand, okay, this is where our velocity being in a different state kind of gives you a different perspective of how people see things. Yeah, you can be in your home state, you're in all these grocery stores, but once you're in another state, you kind of start seeing like all these different behaviors. And so when you're looking at those behaviors, especially if you're the founder and you're doing these demos, you need to pay attention to what consumers are saying because they're the ones who buy your product. And so that was one feedback, like one thing, like what that was one learning. And then another learning was that people wanted a smaller version of our product. That was another learning. So now we went from our 800-gram bag to 600 grams and then bringing down the price point as well. That was another learning that we learned being in another state, right?
Mm.
And then also logistics. Been another learning as well, having your freight lines. So there's been a lot of learnings.
Yes, I don't think the learnings ever stop, really. But yeah, and it makes a lot of sense, and it's so much I think with CPG brands is like you don't know till you know, and you don't know what a consumer is gonna think until they're telling it to you and you're right in front of them. Like where you're not a mind reader, and so you have to kind of put yourself out there, like you said, and go do those demos and talk to people and to find that out. And I'm thinking now, as you were saying, so last year you didn't focus on any of these trade shows, but it sounds like this year, I know you went to Expo West, and so you're starting to maybe put your toe back in the water of that world again. And I'm curious how that's been going and like what it's been like to continue to come back to an expo and like start having these conversations again.
Yeah, it's been good because now that we are in a bigger facility, we're more efficient. Our packaging is in a much better place than it was before. I'm more confident that we're able to expand into a different region and we won't have as many issues as we did when we started out. So that's the reason why it's good that we just kind of paused, you know, tested out the waters in Texas, which is a great state to do a test at, and then coming back to this and like now focusing because now we're like, okay, we can do this. We have all of the, we feel very like, I don't know how to explain it. Like we feel bulky enough, or I don't know, I don't know if I'm saying it right. We're like, yeah, we can do this. We got this, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, so it's been great because now we're like, okay, we can go after these grocery stores. And then this is like, this is a great grocery store for us to go with, like work with. But we're also being very strategic too with the grocery stores we work with, because I don't I'm not the type of person who's gonna go national just because a store came to me and was like, "Okay, you need to do national." I would literally walk away, just because I understand my capital and I understand, like, how much that would cost. So, I'm the type of person that'd be like, "Okay, I would walk away," right? So, we've been very also strategic with that and, like, making sure that we're talking to the right stores in the right regions that we wanna be in.
Yeah, I'm curious what those regions are, or like, are there specific states or regions, yeah, that you see Xinca really thriving in?
Yes, so being on the Home Shopping Network, their website, has been a very good learning curve because they've been an amazing partner. And we've been able to understand even further than when we started direct to consumer, with them, understanding where people want our product, right? So we know we want like people in South Carolina, North Carolina want the product there. Florida, New Jersey, New York, Boston, we're already in Texas. California, of all places. We get a lot of orders from Los Angeles and the Bay Area, the Valley. So, yeah, like we have demand in certain places, right? So understanding all of that and going to the right retailers, like we know which retailers, are in those regions and we know who we want to work with. Like we know that we have a big demand in Florida, right? Like we understand that. But like, we also want to make sure that we work with the correct retailer, right? And we also look at the data because one thing that a lot of founders don't do is like, yeah, like this retailer came to you and wants to onboard you, but look at the data. Like, is your product going to sell there? Like, do you have enough to support that? And so like that's one thing that I do as well. Like we want to be in California because we know we have so much demand there too, right? And so like I go for stores that I know that our product will do well we won't need a lot of marketing dollars to support that. And we know the Midwest, there are certain regions there too that people want our product too, but we know we're gonna have to invest dollars there, in marketing. So, being very strategic with all of that, especially being back in food shows, um, has
Yeah,
been.
and speaking of being back in food shows, I'm curious, how was your return to Expo West? How did it go? How are the conversations? How are all the events?
Yeah, it was great. I was exhausted. I was exhausted. Before that, I was at Fancy Food. So going from Fancy Food to Expo West was like not a very short time period. And then between all that, I had to make sure we had enough, all of our orders fulfilled before we went. But it was good. I did win audience choice at Expo West Pitch Slam, which is amazing. And yeah, it was a lot. It's a lot.
Yes. How did you did you like, I know some brands will go to an expo or fancy foods like with a list of, retailers and like a photo of the buyers they're looking for, and what was your approach in terms of having conversations or trying to make it a meaningful investment?
Yeah, so I kind of already know which stores I want to be in. But normally I'm very unorganized when it comes to like going to food shows, which I should be better at. But no, I just kind of like I know for the Expo West, there's gonna be a lot of West Coast buyers, right? And so we know we want to be in like the California region. So when we get approached by a buyer and they're in California, we're like, okay, great, right? So we're like, we would love to work with you. But if we get approached by another, for example, someone on the East Coast, we're like, okay, we need distribution. Who is your distributor, right? So we are very open to work with certain grocery stores, but if we don't have distribution, we try to make sure there's if it's gonna work. If it doesn't work, we're gonna like follow up with you later, not right now, right? So it's a give or take, but I'm terrible when it comes to organizing myself for food shows. So don't take my advice. Follow other people's advice.
Well, you're lucky you're charming and your product's delicious, so, it works out. Your disorganization is okay because you've got it, you make it work. Um, it's interesting, though, what you're saying about the distribution thing, and I hear that often from founders, like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, and it's, like, distribution and retail, and I'm curious how you are approaching that in terms of, like, getting further distribution. Are you kind of, like, waiting for a store to make that necessary? Are you like, how are you approaching that?
Yeah, so for us, one of the biggest learnings for me was I'm thankful for Dwight Richmond actually. Let's even start that cuz he's the first person who gave me the opportunity to be in all of the town and countries. That was the only grocery store I wanted to be in. I even said that to him when I met him at Fancy Food, like, when we first started, and I was like, "You're the only store we'll be at. I don't care about the other buyers." And so, I don't wanna say, like, I care about the other buyers, but, I didn't really understand, like, retail as much as I do now. And so, I really wanted to be in that grocery store, and I'm thankful for him because he was able to connect us to our distributor here in Washington State. And so working closely with that distributor, like, cause they're a small family-owned distributor and they do frozen and when I say they're family-owned, it was the wife, the husband sadly passed away, but it's her daughter and her son-in-law, so they all do this. And so they were a great learning of how to work with a great distributor. What I mean great distributor is that they Rob, he was the husband. He told me a few things and he was very transparent with me. He said, "Don't price your product where you're not going to be making money." Those were his exact words. He said, "Give me a price where you're going to be comfortable and you will make money and you won't go out of business." And I was like, because I'd given him a price. He was like, "Are you sure you're going to be able to make money this way?" Like he literally rejected that price and like was like, "Yeah." And so I really learned, like, how to work with a distributor with them. And so, like, when I see like a KE or UNFI, and even then, like one thing that I learned with like, someone from KE explained to me when you should work with KE. And so it was really cool to hear that perspective. And they were like, stay as regional as you can. And when you get to that, level and you have that much money to spend, then you should work with a KE or UNFI. And then because this person was explaining it to me, and I was like, wow, you really need to be giving a class in this because a lot of people talk about it. And then they were saying that, a lot of people's mistakes, especially when they're small brands and they get into a unifier keiki, like you're working with a national distributor and you need to have that national money, right? And so she was explaining it to me. And so she was like, stick to regional distributors. So for me, my strategy has been working with as many regional distributors as possible and building that velocity. And if there's a grocery store who doesn't want us to work with the regional distributor, well, like sometimes we kind of walk away, because we know we're not ready for like a unifier KeHE, but I'm in KeHE and, I decide to work with regional distributors. And I'm not saying anything bad about KeHE and Unify. What I'm saying is like, you just need to know when you're ready to be in those distributors.
We'll be right back.
Are you going to crush it on Amazon this year? It's such an important channel, but it's so hard to do alone, and most agencies are a total ripoff. We can't afford $5,000 a month and a commission on our sales. They just don't get it. That's why I love our partners at Daybreak. They are full service, meaning they do the creative work, the listings, the logistics, and of course, all the ads, all with the most reasonable retainer out there. I work with them personally. I'm so grateful we have such a good partner to recommend out to you, our community. They do evaluate your product first to see if it might be a fit. So if you want them to have a look, email them startupcpg@daybreak.agency and they'll do a free audit for you. Good luck, everyone.
Yeah, and like you said, especially when you're bootstrapping, it's like every penny counts. Like, those are expensive jumps, and particularly like to expand in that way. So that makes a lot of sense. And I'm thinking about as you were speaking, I love how you also just like call out everyone you've gotten learnings from and like that has supported you. And it's such a great quality, I feel like, as a founder. And something I see you do also within the startup CPG community is you're such a like, a founder resource and like always willing to connect with other people. And um something I wanted to talk to you a little bit. Well, you're one of our community leaders for our startup CPG community in Seattle. And I'd love to just hear a little bit about like how and I'm not just asking you to gas up like startup CPG. I just more mean like how being in community with other founders and like the resources that have supported you as you've been on this journey as largely a solo founder, and like how what's been helpful.
Yeah. So Startup CPG has been an amazing community. Like, I don't have anything bad to say about Startup CPG because you guys provide so many resources. Like, I remember when I found out you guys existed, I I always talk about this. I didn't understand distribution or brokers. And I remember I was so confused and there's this video that's like I don't remember if it's 101 distribution versus brokers, right? And so that video kind of broke down what was the difference between a broker and a distributor, right? Because sometimes when you're starting out, those two can get confused. And the reason I say that is because some brokers work with distributors and you're just like, wait a minute, but how does that work? Right. And so understanding how that little world of its own functions was very important. Right. So that kind of video was amazing for me to understand. And then also, I remember I did another video, I did another learning video, which was around like packaging, because you can get sued for certain things in your packaging. And so that was another one that was like cool, and to kind of listen to her talk about it was another thing. And then also the investment like conversation that happened a few months ago, like stuff like that. So like having all of those learnings and like having all of that access has been great because one thing I learned in CPG is like it's tough to come by a lot of that information. And so like when you have that at your disposal and you can absorb all of that for free, you definitely do it. And another thing that I love that you guys do is like um the grocery runs and all of the sampling events in the different regions, right? And if you're a bootstrapping company and you can't afford to go to, say fancy food or Expo West, like this is a good way for you to get exposure to buyers, exposure in different regions too. I know we just went to Austin for the Whole Foods grocery run. And then I know last year we did the Expo as backpack brand with you guys too. And so like doing all of these different things can really help you because you're getting that exposure and also networking and getting to know all the people in the industry. So yeah, Startup CPG has been an amazing resource and like, leverage that as much as you can if you are bootstrapping and you're trying to learn more about retail.
Mhm. Yeah, wow. Well, thanks for saying those nice things about Startup CPG, and I'm glad it's been a good resource for you. And as you were talking, I was also thinking about, like, I'm curious, like, doing all the sampling and things like that, and I know what my response to the pupusas has been, but I'm curious about, what your community's response has been in terms of, like, your family members and also just, like, the larger, like, not only Salvadorian community, but just, like, the customers and what their response has been to trying your pupusas.
Yeah, so my Salvadoran community, so we're very involved with our community in Texas and Houston because there's a big Salvadoran community in the Houston area. And so we're involved with two nonprofit organizations down there. One is Friends of El Salvador, the other one is Central American Collective. And so both of the nonprofit organizations, one of them helps build schools in El Salvador, provide resources to uh, low income, kids and families. And the other one helps like, artists in the Central American, communities, like artists that are like doing movies or like books, etc. So like, and they're all both nonprofit organizations. And so we've seen a lot of like support for our brand. But sometimes we do get that like, oh, pupusa shouldn't be frozen from our community. And we totally understand that since, like we are bringing in our culture, which has never been in the freezer out in the United States. Um, and so, like, a lot of people have, like, been like, "Oh, pupusas shouldn't be frozen. Why are you doing this?" And blah, blah, blah. But we have a lot of people who are supportive because they don't live in big metropolitan cities. So finding pupusas are tough to find. So they're very, very happy and supportive. And so I get sometimes emails from people saying, "Thank you for creating this brand because now I can get, my own pupusas from you in places that I can't find them." And it's cool. But my family, they've been great about it. They were actually at Expo West for a pitch slam. They all came out, and some of my cousins who live in Boston were like, "Why didn't you tell us? We would have flown out."
Oh my god.
And I was just like, "Girls, this is just a pitch slam." They were like, "We wanted to be there." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Whatever, I'm sorry." But it was cool to have them there and to really see all the work that was done. And my mom, she was diagnosed with early onset dementia like last year. So her being there was kind of really cool for her to experience that. And she was really, really thrilled and happy. But yeah, no, my community, part of it has been supportive and the other part hasn't, but I'm not saying, I totally understand where everything comes from.
Mhm.
But yeah, like people have been very receptive, especially for the beans and cheese pupusa. They're like, "Oh, this reminds me of a bean and cheese burrito." And I'm like, "Oh, cool." And so one of the cool things too that I've learned is a lot of people eat them in different ways. Like the beans and cheese one, they like to put a fried egg on top
Oh,
with
I love
avocado.
that.
And I was like,
Okay.
"Wow, y'all are getting creative." And then some people like to take the loroco and cheese one. They like to put a hot dog in the middle and fold it like a bun and eat it like a hot dog.
Oh my god.
I know. So people get very creative. Other people tell me they buy kimchi and eat it with kimchi. So it's been really cool because, like, I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, traditionally you eat it with your hands and with curtido non-spicy salsa, but like people are creative. Like, I'm not gonna judge you. Like, if you enjoy my product that way, I am so happy. Like, please tell me how much, like, how creative you're getting with my pupusa, with my product. Oh, so
Well,
it's
I
been
can
cool.
tell you that I was deeply not creative, and I just had it with salsa, but it was still delicious. But I'm not as creative as some of your other customers, it sounds like. But that's really fun, and it's always yeah, it's cool to hear about how other people are kind of like reimagining eating your own the own thing you created. So as we wrap up, I always like to ask, like, how can our listeners learn more about Zinca? Where can they buy Zinca, and or where can they learn where they can buy Zinca? And how can they like follow along your journey as you continue to grow and expand Xinca Foods?
Definitely. So if you follow us on social media, it's just at xincafoods.com, Xincafoods. You'll be able to like, find us that way. And you'll be able to learn what stores we're launching in because we're gonna be launching in 2 different regions this year. Yeah, I know. I'm not saying anything. I'm keeping my mouth shut. We're also
Exciting.
launching a new product. Yeah, I'm not talking about it yet. So we're launching a new product, we're launching a new region. And so, if you really want to follow our journey, go follow us on Instagram, TikTok, even on LinkedIn. I'm very bad at posting on LinkedIn for for Zinca. And then also if you don't live in California or Washington State or Texas, you can definitely buy our products on the Home Shopping Network. So on their website. So we're one of their, brands on there. And then if you live in Texas, you can find us at Central Market. And if you live in Washington, you can find us at Town and Country, Met Market, PCC, and then a few other stores. But you can also go to our website, sincafoods.com, and you can go to the store locator and find more information of where we are.
Amazing. Well, I'm so excited to see what the new product's gonna be and where else you're gonna launch this year. And so excited just for the general future of Zinca Foods. And hopefully you'll be near me on the East Coast soon so that I can go buy my Zinca Foods. But it was so much fun to chat with you, Cynthia.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If you loved it, I would so appreciate it if you could leave us a review. You could do it right now. If you're an Apple Podcasts, you can scroll to the bottom of our Startup CPG podcast page and click on Write a Review. Leave your company name in there. I will try to read it out. If you're in Spotify, you can click on About and then the star rating icon. If you are a service provider that would like to appear on the Startup CPG podcast, you can email us at partnerships@startupcpg.com. Lastly, if you found yourself grooving along to the music, it is my band. You can visit our website and listen to more. It is superfantastics.com. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.